You could catch up. Okay, is it recording now? It should be recording. So this is really your time, you and your team's time to, kind of walk through a little bit of what you're thinking for us to help with chapter integration, for us to, to lift you up and assist in any way that we possibly can. And we're so excited, obviously, for this chapter. It is, I think I told you in the beginning, but people mostly know that it is literally the most downloaded chapter in emerging countries. So we're very interested in making this chapter, as robust and accessible and successful as it can be. And we're so grateful to you for leading it. So thank you very, very much. It looks like we have having a critical mass of people. So we'll give good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, everyone. Jack, Nina, Sergio, Chaiki, everyone. I'm so glad to see everyone here. We are really, and SJ, thank you for joining us, for joining this esteemed group of amazing researchers and people. It is the best thing that I can be doing right now with my time. That's my contribution to helping leave this world a better place. And I thank you, every one of you, for upholding that. So Tabia, I want to make the best use of the time for you and your group. And again, we are recording. I am taking notes, and we'll also have a transcript. And I also send you the chat. So you'll have much of our notes. Please don't worry about that. But you and your group can attend to just listening and being in dialogue with people on the phone. And I see also Nina here, who has a related chapter. So we'll be very glad to see how these things articulate with one another. So with that, I am recording, and I will turn it over, Tabia, to you and your group. And we thank you again.
Thank you so much, and so great to be a part of this group and to be able to participate. It's again, Elizabeth, thank you for your leadership and really, really keeping us connected, as I know many of us can't be on all of the workshop calls. So I want to first be sure to acknowledge the members of the team that were able to make it on this call. And so among them includes, and I'm just reading from my Zoom boxes, Dr. Latrice Rollins, also Dr. S.J. Dodd, and also Dr. Ann Dozier, and please forgive me, others who may be on. Oh, and Dr. Mickey Eater, I see you. And there are a few others that may only be on by phone. So please do interject and announce yourselves if I haven't seen you yet.
Latrice is here. Latrice is on.
Yes, right. Dr. Latrice Rollins, who's on as well. So grateful that she can be on. And so, our chapter, I think, is chapter 7, and the title is, and I have the hard copy here, Program Evaluation and Evaluating Community Engagement. That was the chapter in the 2011 primer. And so I think it's important to just acknowledge our intention in doing a bit of what I think we all talked about back when we were thinking about kind of the recreation and reboot of the primer, and that is to figure out ways to ensure as much diversity and equity, and certainly we've not reached that destination in all the ways that we'd like to. But as you can see in the description of the authors that are listed here, there are 4 of us who bring some history to the chapter. Myself and Mickey and Chantrice were co-authors in 2011. We have today 2 community co-authors that have a rich history of partnership with some of the other co-authors. and independent leadership in community engaged and community-led evaluations. And then we also talked about trying to promote engagement and leadership of junior faculty. And we have 2 junior faculty members, Dr. Latrice Rollins, as well as not Kimberly Harris, Natalie Cook, who are junior faculty persons and a part of this team. So we think that all of those things are important, both history, community leadership, as well as promoting engagement of junior faculty in this work. So the way that, and we've been meeting generally bi-weekly. I'm sure others who are leading chapters, you've figured out ways to ensure that there are touch points, but we do have recurring meetings set. They've not always happened, but we've tried to advance the work offline. And so what I did reflecting our thoughts and engagement related to reviewing the existing content is, rather than separating the current content overview from the proposed new content, I'm using these 2 slides to spend time talking about what was in the chapter and pausing in red font to discuss just a bit of our ideas surrounding additions to the chapter based on the priorities of how the field of community engaged evaluation has changed over the past decade, how we want to intentionally infuse the realities and our priorities of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'll speak very intentionally. Our intention is to promote the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, not in terms of community engaged recruitment and retention in studies designed to evaluate programs, but to foster an emphasis on the depth and necessity of community leadership in the co-creation of evaluations that matter. So you can see here, and anybody who's among the co-authors, please do jump in. I can't see everyone, so please do unmute. Please don't use the chat because I'm not good at looking at it. So just unmute and interject, please. So in the existing chapter, there's a background, which I'll reference at the end of this, that really is a nod to all of the previous chapters. So I'll put out this question and request now, and that is that we want to be able to certainly acknowledge not just the chapter titles and our guess at the content, but if there is a place for those chapters that have been workshopped where your final outlines live, it would certainly be helpful to see those so that we can be sure as we frame that background, kind of like the abstract at the end, that we're reflective of the final decisions on what we will cover. And I think those outlines will also guide us as we want to ensure that if are any evaluation frameworks or priorities that we should be cross-referencing or linking in our chapter, that we do that through review of your final outlines or workshopped content. So what we will certainly do, what we agreed at first was, in reviewing the chapter, we agreed that, and not just those of us who were co-authors in 2011, the 2011 primer, it was certainly a strong foundation and covered all of the evaluation essentials, right? So we will be looking to refresh and update the program evaluation definitions as reflective of updates to evaluation criteria and priorities through NIH, through CDC, obviously, and other authorities in evaluation like the American Evaluation Association, among others. So in the current edition, The standards of evaluation are detailed, as are the evaluation phases and processes. And within those, there are outlined 4 areas: evaluation planning, implementation, completion with a focus on summative outcome and impact evaluation, and then some discussion surrounding dissemination and reporting. So what I will describe briefly, and I'm going to pause to allow other co-authors who want to add anything or elaborate to please do. So we agree that while these terms and frameworks may not be listed by name, really the sentiments behind them are important to address the importance of attending to equity in community leadership, particularly in the planning of evaluations. So the intersectionality framework is one that we've discussed, even though we're very sensitive to the fact that that framework is primarily US bound. So we may talk about intersectionality as a framework, but we'll talk more broadly about intention that is needed in ensuring that there is authenticity and depth of community evaluation leadership and representation at the planning phase of any evaluation, right? So by project, ensuring that it is not just someone who may represent what looks like community, but really that the intersection between geography, language, as well as race and ethnicity, sexual identity, if relevant, etc. All of those things are important to attend to in identifying community evaluation leadership and representation as distinct from community plans towards sound recruitment and retention of participants in research and other approaches to evaluate initiatives. The second is related to something that we agreed, and Dr. Dodds, if you want to elaborate on this, I invite you to, because you brought this up as an important priority, and that is really unpacking ideologies of dominance. And please let me know if I've said it in the right way. And so while, you know, things like social injustice or political determinants of health might be terms that we understand here in the US, the realities of unequal power, elitism, wealth, and exclusivity must be addressed and attended to in the planning of the evaluation to ensure that equity is sought as a priority when we think about evaluation membership, leadership, who is equitably engaged in the planning conversations, contributions, design, as well as metric decisions. So it's rolling back the community engagement and really more prioritizing community leadership in the formative stages before a step is taken in the evaluation. So Dr. Dodd, I don't know if you want to elaborate. This was just so important, and you were the one who really brought it up. So I welcome you to add anything that I've missed.
Thank you. I think you said that eloquently. I think the only thing I would add is the notion, and hello everybody, it's good to meet you all. Just the notion that the evaluation shouldn't compound dominance, like that if you keep in mind the ideology of dominance, that a lot of evaluations sort of replicate ideologies of dominance within their strategies, within their membership stakeholders, even the way we look at outcome and disseminate outcomes. So just keeping in mind notions of not wanting to replicate ideologies of dominance in the evaluation process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And again, you know, this whole notion of DEI, we really want to bring some depth to what today feels like assurances towards researcher and investigators being diverse and representative. We know that's one important concept, but not one that we're necessarily trying to promote here, because we know the primer is not designed for solely research audiences, but really diversity, equity, and inclusion in the leadership of evaluations to ensure that the results really do represent community voice and leadership. So I want to stop there to see how this is feeling. This is a workshop, so before we get too much farther along, I'd love to pause for any feedback on where we are. So the red, what we've described here in red are the additions, and there's much more that we already agree should stay there. Nina. Nina, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Well, I just want to thank you because I love this. Oh, you can't hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My internet is spotty where I am. I'm sorry. So I might cut out, but I just love this, deepening here. I think it's really critical, important, and hope that we can maybe exchange paragraphs around dominance of etiology and sense making, meaning making collectively, because we have the same drive in our measurement chapter to include this. And maybe it's just complementary to each other as stated differently by different co-authors, but also want to maybe a value of as we get deeper, sharing those paragraphs and being even more strategically complementary or something. I mean, we've had these same discussions, and so I love it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nina. And I look forward to, now that our train is moving, for us to have our follow-up discussion on the synchronizing things with your chapters. So very important that they complement.
So, Tabia?
Yes, Mickey.
Hi, thanks. And thanks, Nina. I'm in kind of both groups and have been waiting for things to take a little better shape to figure out how to include some brief remarks about realist evaluation, which I think will help bring some of this together. And it was just a matter of being patient and seeing how things took shape before kind of what I have been doing over the last 6 weeks is trying to catch up on the immense amount of literature that's come out in the last decade around realist evaluation. So I hope that we can help refine and round out the chapters a little bit without creating too much additional material, and kind of help create connections between the two chapters and avoid redundancies when possible. So I agree, Nina, and we're working on it. It's just letting it kind of take a little more shape before starting to add to it.
Mickey, thank you for that reminder. I remember you bringing up realist evaluation as something that could be an important sync point across the chapter. So thank you for reminding us of that. And once we get to the next slide, that might be where it sits in terms of different evaluation approaches, but let's continue to let it percolate. Thank you for that reminder. Sergio?
Yes, Tavia, thank you. This is very helpful, and thank you to all your co-authors and the inclusivity that you have is just admirable. I really appreciate that, involving community members and also new researchers. I'm glad to hear that. Just
Thank you.
one thing on the content of the chapter that you mentioned at the end, and that is the storytelling. I think that that's very attractive to me. Actually, we have been working with farm workers throughout the pandemic, and this has been a powerful way of engaging them, and also to creating mutually messaging and communications. Uh, it's very challenging, has been for the last 3 decades at least, to engage the hardest to reach populations into services. And there are many barriers about it. But one way that we have been exploring is to do it through community engagement. So I think that in the evaluation, I would strongly recommend or suggest that more work is done in that area. I'll be happy to share some things with you because, this is we have done focus groups and we have done interviews with farm workers primarily. And also we're about to do it with federally qualified health centers, key people that are serving them. And we'll share some information about that. But that in particular, that caught my attention, in addition to other things that Nina and Mickey mentioned as well.
Thank you, Sergio. I appreciate that, and I'll certainly follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, any other comments or feedback so far? Okay. So, the current content on implementation completion really seemed good and relevant, and certainly we'll be working to update the references and thought leadership that exists that should be cited. In the dissemination and reporting component, in addition to that, which already existed, Sergio already got to it, and that is the collaborative sense making and really thinking about our and other innovative approaches and strategies to engaging community leaders in the data review and analysis process. I think all of us do agree that gone are the days, hopefully, even though, folks who are wanting to do this and learn from the primer, some may still believe that community leaders are not interested and cannot digest and support data analysis and dissemination. And we want to make sure that we pause to talk about some of the innovative approaches that we and others have employed, not only to advance the process through which we review and make sense of data from evaluations, but equally, if not more important, are approaches to both scholarly as well as broader storytelling of the results. So how is it that we and others have advanced community co-authorship of the results of evaluation in ways that might be different from having two research teams and their students work together? And then more broadly, again, how do we tell the story of the process as well as the outcomes in ways that reflect their co-authorship and leadership in kind of that 360 closing of the loop from planning through to dissemination? So those we didn't see as areas explicitly discussed in terms of processes that others can replicate with steps. So those are additions to the dissemination and reporting components that we've discussed. Okay. So With respect to other existing headings and areas of expansion, there's also a really rich area focused on approaches to evaluation that are specifically community engaged that we wanted to note. And I'll leave you with something to think about that's on the next slide, and that is what other community engaged evaluation approaches should we be sure to include. In 2011, participatory and empowerment evaluation were those that Mickey and Chantrice and others prioritized and detailed, I think with both benefits and challenges. And our newer members of our team thought it was important to also unpack and discuss culturally responsive and equitable evaluation, or CRE, and then the usefulness and cost effectiveness of evaluation from a community engagement lens. Both Dr. Cook and Dr. Harris, and I think Dr. Harris is not in at an academic institution, but they both bring rich expertise on CRE or cost effectiveness evaluation from a community engaged lens. So those were the two that we thought were worth infusing in addition to the other approaches. And Mickey, this might be the place where realist evaluation could go. So I've made myself a note for us to discuss that when we meet next week, Monday.
And I'll try to write up a very brief page or so outline or statement to share.
Thank you, Mickey. So evaluation methods, and of course, you know, those that must be there include the stages, details surrounding quantitative and qualitative, which, you know, those must be included. We'll certainly refresh the references, etc. And then there's detailed and very comprehensive existing content on mixed methods. The one area that we really want to unpack and include is our RCAs, rapid community assessments. So we know that that concept may not be as new, or that approach, but certainly for any of you, and there are many of us who've been involved in COVID response and recovery grants, whether they're SEAL or RADx Up, and now CDC is catching up among others, other networks, to provide funding, where we are in a place where we want to engage communities. We must do it quickly, not compromise quality, maintain trust, and also ensure that we've created a safe space for tough conversations that double as evaluation data. And so for that reason, the rapid community assessment, for all of the reasons I described, we thought was very important, given the timing of when this will be published, a second, you know, walking into year 2, or in the midst of year 2 of our COVID era. So we thought that approach was important when we think about community trust, evaluation rigor, maintaining trustworthiness, etc. So finally, as folks consider their questions on these additions, the final existing part of the chapter is evaluating the community engagement process, and forgive that unclosed bracket on the second bullet. So a new addition, and all of these in red are new additions, are the assessment of the community campus partnership. So this chapter talks about the importance of community engagement. We're advancing it to leadership, discussions surrounding equity, inclusion, ideologies of dominance, etc. But nowhere did we see discussion about ensuring that there is a finger on the pulse of the community campus partnership. And that is with a title that exists already, of evaluating community engagement. So an important addition is review of the literature, but also calling on the leadership of some of our co-authors in assessing the partnership itself, which likely will be the reason why the community campus partners partner again on the evaluation. So I wanted to give, if she's still on, and Dr. Rollins, Latrice, if you could say a little bit about that addition to a chapter like this.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So I'm excited to partner with one of our community partners to write this section of the chapter and to really focus on what are some of those principles to facilitating this community academic partnership. And as Dr. Akintobi said, looking at some of the literature to really update some of the information in the chapter about what assessing these partnerships looks like. So, so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dr. Rollins. And we'll, try and make this as practical as possible, because again, people will be looking at this primer at large for actual steps that they can take. And so we want to outline those similar to the outlines on the types of evaluations, methods, right? Qual, quant, and just as we talk about CRE and cost effectiveness, will outline actual steps that people can take. And thank you, Chaik, as well as Donna, for your feedback in the chat.
Abby,
And
I have a question.
Please.
So it's interesting, and this is probably semantics, but they thought of, and I know you're framing that perhaps as community academic partnership as opposed to campus partnership, and wanted to know if that was deliberate or not, because I'm not sure which one conveys more of a town and gown kind of persona. But oftentimes, I'm sorry that I'm in the dark. I will come into the light sometime. It shows I'm Black and proud, right? How's that?
So what do you think? I mean, do you think that academic or research, even though I know this is not limited to research, what do you think would be better? And it wasn't just in response to your initial questions, it wasn't by design.
Right. And I'm not sure, Tabia, what's the right word, because I think it's a bit of a struggle, but campus conjured for me more of that town and gown kind of image than academic, maybe because all of us are more accustomed to to academic. But the other thing is, and I know this can't be everything to everyone, the engagement goes beyond academic medical centers, right? So we expect NIH to hopefully learn, CDC to learn about how to do engagement well, rather than just being a conduit for the information. And I'm sort of wondering if there might be a broader way to think about what the dyad is, if it's a dyad, or what the people are in that space of evaluation. But I would sort of step back for a minute and say, I have really listened, mesmerized by the approach that you have constructed, because I think putting the community in the center of the evaluation process, dealing with the power issues, and that I think are really important for us to address in a moment, and for the future, it's really important. Anyway, so give us some thoughts, but I really love how you framed this, and thank you to your group.
Thank you so much, Chaik, and thanks to all of the co-authors who are on. And that's important food for thought, because the truth is that when we think about the partnership, it may not necessarily be community academic. It could be community clinical, community, so that language, as we've discussed since the beginning, is so very important. So I don't know if others have other perspectives on that, because would love to get reflections.
Nina and DJ. So Nina and then DJ both have their hand up.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
DJ, why don't you go first? You had your hand up first.
Okay, thanks, Nina. Tabia, great, great presentation, and kudos to all that's all involved. I was just thinking that the tie-in, a lot of what you're talking about ties into the principles in chapter 2. So think about tying some of your information in the dyads, or however you want to talk about the different types of partnerships that are out there. And some of the principles really do tie into what you're talking about. And like some of the that I think some of the chat and some of the comments that have been made, it's not always academic and community town and gown. It could be a CBO and the academic health center. It could be one community speaking to another community. It doesn't always have to be the researchers or the academics partnering with a community. So think about that too, because the book was really, in 2011, stressed community as it could be anybody. We're a community of authors revising a book, and we're partnering with other different types of communities. Some of us are academics, some of us come from different backgrounds. So anyway, keep that in mind. The one chapter that we heard a few weeks ago was on research in health. And we added that chapter when we realized that we were speaking, the tone of the book became more research oriented rather than partnering with different kinds of communities. So that was added later. So keep that in mind. That's all I have to say. Thanks. Great job.
Thank you, Donna. Nina?
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
Stepping back on a couple things that you said earlier, I love that you added really strong community-led or community participation in dissemination and actions after that. And I would thought that you should include some references to data sharing and ownership agreements that really solidify, formalize the data being owned by the community, or at least disseminated collectively. So those formalize what you said. And so that would be an addition. I also, for the participatory evaluation thought, there is a whole area called transformative participatory evaluation, which is really based on social justice and social action as goals of the evaluation, not just to do it in a participatory way, but what's the purpose of doing it?
Yes.
One of the chapters in our CBPR book really does a really nice job of showing what transformative participatory evaluation is. I can send you that, or you might have it, but just to kind of maybe extend it to participatory and participatory transformative evaluation, is it adds to what you're doing anyway. And then the third is just a really an important complementarity, because the majority, I would say, of our measurement chapter is the metrics, both qualitative and quantitative, on partnership evaluation. That's the focus. So our focus is to really deepen that multi-stakeholder, like everybody's talked about, partnering with metrics around power, metrics around shared governance, metrics around decision-making, metrics around trust, all of those things that we need to look at as a partnership. So this is an important addition to your chapter, and we will be extending it because that's kind of the entirety of our chapter. So we should just, and I'd be happy to talk with Latrice about that if you're leading that with your colleagues, Latrice, how to kind of do that in a good way. And I, one more thought here. I do have to leave at 10, so I didn't know if you were, I'll just try if there's ongoing discussion. I think you go to 10:30.
Yeah, I'm
This-
almost finished, and I so
this
appreciate all of
meeting,
this,
or is it just
Nina.
till 10? Or okay.
So,
The last thing. Oh,
go ahead, Nina.
the last thing is I'm glad to hear about the research in health edition, because I think I do think, despite that there are many, many stakeholders, what Tabia laid out, there's this hierarchy that is really academic and the rest.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should lose the challenge to that hierarchy. And, even if you have a CBO partnering with the health department, partnering with the coalition, neighborhood association, that's a different kind of partnership than so many of the research ones have to challenge that hierarchy. So I don't mind that focus as long as we extend it beyond that. So don't lose that either, although we recognize multi-stakeholders. That's my perspective anyway.
Nina, thank you so much for that. We will certainly be in touch and connect, both you and I, but also important contributors in the space of the assessment of partnerships. Dr. Rollins, I'm sure you are not opposed to connecting with Dr. Wallerstein on this as well. Very, very good feedback. It looks like Syed is up next.
Saeed, Linda, and then Mickey.
Great.
Hi, Tabia, wonderful presentation. Congratulations to all of you. It will be another amazing chapter.
Mhm.
And with the new addition of new thoughtful ideas, connecting evaluation with all the other pieces, as you mentioned, will be very powerful. A couple of comments. One comment is, the prominence of community involvement in evaluation, dissemination, etc., is called out in this chapter. My hope is from the very beginning, from the introduction, this will call out that community involvement should be from the inception of the idea to development of the team, development of a project, ultimately evaluation, assessment, implementation, dissemination at all phases. I'm sure that will show up just like it showed up in the second edition. I'm sure it will be even more prominent, not only in the evaluation section, but all the other sections. And second comment I have is this dialogue and discussion has a historical fact of a community engaged research. What does it mean? What does CDPR means? And though history is full of community academic partnership, the original literature, many things came from that. So we cannot forget, and we should not ignore the historical fact. Many of the ideas and many of the thoughts came with the community academic partnership. And in community engaged research, it is very broad. You can connect from community to community, community to CBOs, and community to the academic. I think there is something should be said about how broad it could be, but basic principle of community engagement could be used for any dyad or triad or quad, whatever we like to call it, so that people don't get confused. Is it only for academic? Is it for CBO to CBO? Because those are the discussion I sometimes face, even in the community when they talk about different project with different partners. So this will be a major identifying point that yes, principles you have to follow, values you have to do community engage. Everything else ultimately flows from those values and principles. I think that's a critical piece. So I think I would not most probably go through the semantic too much, because we will come up with another term very soon. By the time the book is published, that will become popular. That is our job, especially for the academia. So we'll come up with another term for evaluation. There was a time we did lots of participatory evaluation. We did here too. And suddenly I read less about it. So I'm just saying that keeping that historical fact and the continuous dynamic changes in the community engaged, to me, is the most critical. That is the reason it's a growing field. It is not a done field. So, but I'm very happy, Tabia, with the way you put together the chapter, and I'm not surprised, I know you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Syed, for all of that great feedback. Linda, or is it Liz? Did you, I think Liz had to step
I
up.
took myself off because so many people wanted to weigh in, but I did want to mention, and then I'll turn it over to Linda, Mickey, and Lorraine, that we have a YouTube channel. This book has a YouTube channel, and you can follow the workshopping on the YouTube channel, which I'll send around a link to. But Tabia, your idea was such a good one. Let me set up a Dropbox so people can put in their outlines and we can see the progress as we go. So I'll be setting that up. So I did want to let you know, but it's Linda, Mickey, and Lorene, and DJ is going to chair the last like 7 minutes of the meeting. I can't leave this. It's so fascinating. Wonderful. Your team did such an your team did such an exceptional job, and you have lifted us all up with this, and I am unbelievably grateful. Linda.
Thank you.
Hi, Tabia. Hi to the group as well. I wanted to mention a couple of things. One is on the slide before when you mentioned different engagement ideas. I think there is one idea that would be innovative, and that is the arts and medicine strategy, arts and medicine groups. There are people going out and doing dance, they're doing storytelling, they're doing music, and they're engaging communities in that way. And I guess my biggest question is, other than saying ditto for all the other accolades that you've received, I suppose I'm not quite understanding what is the outcome of the engagement piece, because it seems like we don't want to say the word improving health, but it seems like everything that I've heard engaged in this chapter is all about having people become healthier people, or having a better community, a better quality of life in the community. And so when we say that we're not going to talk about recruitment and retention, those words, I think, like Shaik is saying when he talked about semantics, those might not be the right words we're talking about, but it's what we're talking about, really. And the pandemic has shown us that there are many epidemics in our community, and we're trying to focus on those, whether it's hypertension, drug abuse, overdose, getting people to be not so, having people with more vaccine confidence, those kinds of things. We are working towards a goal. And it seems so, while those words should not dominate, they are a significant aspect of what we're doing here right now, why we're here, why we're funded to do what we do, and why we were probably asked to participate in this principles guideline. Because as NCATS moves towards the next phase, and it's because of NCATS and requiring community engagement that there's been so many transformative strategies. As they move to the next phase, there will be significant projects that will be the focus of what people need to do. So they will need to focus on a particular problem or project that will engage communities. And so I just want to make sure that, because we've done this, we started this because we want every single person to have a voice in treatments and in interventions and in the research, quote, enterprise. So I think that we need to still decide, are we going in that direction of quality improvement and life improvement and health improvement? Because isn't that the reason we are involved in some part of the community engagement process?
Linda, thank you so much for that. And I appreciate your attention to that very, very important detail. You've described healthcare improvement in the era of COVID. We're interested in vaccine confidence and subsequent vaccine uptake. We can plug and play depending on the intervention, the initiative, whatever that outcome will be. I would propose and invite two things that we consider weaving in not only to this chapter, but to Linda's point, the primer at large, and that is ultimately all of what we're doing is designed to promote and advance health equity in whatever forms that might take. If we are of the mind that health is connected to everything, then certainly health improvement, healthcare improvement, vaccine uptake, all of those things are within that. And I think the co-occurring message, to be clear, is that the path to that being optimal requires attention and prioritizing the principles and values of community engagement and leadership. So there is an end, but the means to it requires intention, and the primer is designed to unpack what those means are.
Thank you, Tabia.
Yeah, so I think we must say that this is not just kumbaya and let's talk and fellowship together without an end, but all of those means make the end optimal and possible in ways that it wouldn't if we were just saying, as I like to describe with our CTSA, one group came and said, we need 1,000 African Americans to participate in this schizophrenia study. Help us now. And we know that's not the way it goes.
Right. Okay, that settles me to that settles me to know that we're all on the same page, and that this is the box that we're trying to get into and figure out what's in it and how do we make it better to get to that end. Thank you, Tabia.
So I think, Linda, what you've described, though, is an important attention. It's something that we all need to attend to. Do we want to, as a part of our language and terms, describe health equity and all of the things that it may mean? We obviously can't be exhaustive, but we probably need somewhere early on and throughout to talk about what the end is and why community engagement in all the ways that the chapters describe can make that end possible and optimal. So it may have been discussed on Tuesdays or Thursdays when I couldn't participate, but to me, Linda, you've brought up an important overarching area with respect to language and just kind of the message that we want to ensure.
Yeah, and I think we can make it explicit. What you've said, we make explicit, right? We don't equate recruitment and into studies with engagement. However, and then the rest. I am gonna go present at this thing. DJ is gonna chair. Mickey, I think it's you and Lorraine, and I so look forward to the rest of this discussion.
Hi, Liz.
So let's see. I hope I don't.
Hi, Liz.
Bye, thank you. I'm going to try not
Thank you,
make
Liz.
sure I don't disconnect everyone. So
I think the comments I want to make have been are connected to a number of observations that other people have already shared. But I do want to underscore the potential issues around the concept of dissemination. I see it as a real force for engagement and for the pursuit of equity. And I think it's really, unfortunately, underdeveloped, particularly from the university.